Are you my daddy? The voice is so small he almost doesn't hear it. Kang Jae-hyun pulls the phone from his ear and looks at the screen. Unknown number. American area code. 2:23 in the morning. He puts it back. Who is this? He says. My name is Evelyn. A pause. Careful breathing. My mommy made me memorize this number. She said if something really bad happened I should call it and ask for Kang Jae-hyun. He stands up from behind his desk. She won't wake up. The voice splinters on the last word and then pulls itself back together with visible effort. I've been trying since this morning and she keeps not waking up and I put a blanket on her and I gave her water but she didn't drink it and I don't know what to do. Where are you? Home. Our apartment. What city? New York. The Bronx. Okay. He's already moving. Jacket. Keys. Okay, Evie, listen to me. Don't open the door for anyone. Don't go anywhere. Stay with your mommy. Can you do that? A small silence. Then quietly, are you my daddy? He stops at the door. 6 years. 6 years of a name he trained himself not to say out loud. A face he trained himself not to look for in crowds. A silence he trained himself to call acceptance. And now a child on the other end of a phone line in the Bronx at 2 in the morning asking him the simplest and most devastating question he has ever been asked. Yes, he says. I am. And I'm coming right now. Okay. I'm on my way. Welcome to Afro-Seoul Stories, Soulmates. Please like, share, and subscribe. He's on a plane before 4 a.m. One man with him. His head of security tries to argue. Jae-hyun looks at him once and he stops. 14 hours. He doesn't sleep for a single minute of them. He sits in the dark of the cabin and does what he always does, builds the picture, organizes what he knows, prepares for what he doesn't. 6 years ago, Avery Thompson put divorce papers on his desk and looked at him with an expression he had never seen on her face before. Something behind her eyes that looked like terror wearing the mask of resolve. He tried everything he knew. She wouldn't talk. She wouldn't explain. And then one morning she was simply not there and every resource he had found nothing. No trail. No contact. Nothing. He'd opened an account in her name 18 months after she disappeared. Funded it every month without fail. He'd watched the balance move, withdrawals regular ones, and told himself she was somewhere stable. Somewhere safe. That she'd made a life and chosen not to include him in it and that he had to find a way to live inside that. He pulls the account up now from the plane. The balance has been moving. Money going out every month like clockwork. But when he calls his financial team and tells them to pull the destination accounts, really pull them with full access, the numbers don't connect to anything with Avery's name attached. Not one transaction. The money has been redirected somewhere else entirely, routed through accounts he doesn't immediately recognize, and he follows 2 layers before the trail gets complicated enough that he needs more time. He puts the phone down. She never had the money. Not 1 cent of it. He stares at the dark window of the cabin for a long time. Then he makes 3 calls. His financial investigator, his New York contact, and an ambulance, dispatched to the address Evie gave him, because whatever state Avery is in she needs medical help before he lands. He's told on the callback that they found a woman unconscious and critical and transported her immediately. The child was taken to a neighbor on the same floor who agreed to keep her until family arrived. He updates the plan. Apartment first. Hospital after. The building is in the Bronx and it makes something tighten in his chest the moment he sees it. He doesn't say anything about it. He goes up the stairs to 3F and knocks on the neighbor's door, and a woman in her 50s opens it and looks at him and says, "You must be the father," in a way that tells him Evie has been talking. Evie is sitting at the woman's kitchen table with a glass of juice she hasn't touched and a stuffed rabbit held against her chest with both arms. She looks up when he walks in and he sees it immediately. She looks exactly like him. The shape of her eyes, the line of her jaw, the particular way she holds herself even now, even frightened. All of him, except for the texture of her hair, tight coils pulled into a puff that's come mostly loose, and the warm brown fullness of her cheeks, which are entirely her mother's. She stares at him. He crouches down so they're at the same level. Evie. Her chin wobbles. Just once. She pulls it back with visible effort and her eyes fill but she doesn't let them spill. A quiet sob escapes, small and contained, and then she pulls that back too. "You came," she whispers. "I came." She gets off the chair and walks to him and tucks her face against his shoulder. He wraps both arms around her and doesn't say anything, just holds on. He thanks the neighbor. He carries Evie back to 3F because her legs have gone unsteady and she keeps her face against his neck the whole way. Inside the apartment, he takes in everything in a few seconds without reacting to any of it. The smallness of it. Children's medicine on the counter, 3 different bottles. A drawing on the refrigerator, crayon stick figures. Mommy written underneath in large, unsteady letters. Tiny shoes by the door, and beside them a pair of women's shoes worn so far down at the heel they list to one side. He sets Evie on the kitchen chair and looks in the refrigerator. Not much. He makes eggs, simple and scrambled, and puts them in front of her with a glass of water. She eats with the stuffed rabbit propped against the table edge and her eyes on him, watchful and still slightly red. "The ambulance people were nice," she says. "They let me ride with her, but then they said I had to go with the neighbor. That was the right thing for them to do. I didn't want to." "I know." She pushes a piece of egg around the plate. "She's been sick before," she says. "But she always woke up before." "What did the doctors say when they arrived?" "They said her breathing was bad." She looks up at him. "Is that very bad?" "We're going to go see her after you eat. The doctors are with her now." "Okay." She goes back to the eggs. Then, "I didn't call straight away when she fell. I waited because she said to wait until it was really bad." A small pause. "I think I waited too long." "You didn't wait too long. You did exactly what she told you to do. You promise." "I promise." She eats the rest without speaking. When she's done, she looks at him with those serious eyes. "Are we going now?" "Yes, but first." He calls his driver and has him bring groceries. Real food, fruit, the things a child should have access to without it being a calculation. "We'll come back here tonight. Tomorrow I'm going to move you somewhere better. Okay?" She looks around the apartment without expression. Then she nods, like she's been moved before and knows how it goes. They get to Lincoln Hospital at 8:30 in the evening. Evie holds his hand through the lobby and down the corridor, and doesn't let go until a nurse takes them to a small waiting area and tells him the doctor will come speak with him shortly. Evie sits beside him. She's been awake since this morning, and the fear and the hours alone and the crying have all caught up with her, and she's fading fast. He can see it in the way her eyes keep closing and snapping back open. "You can sleep," he tells her. "I want to hear what the doctor says. I'll tell you everything in the morning." She looks at him, deciding. Then she leans against his arm and closes her eyes and is asleep in under 2 minutes, completely out, with harangue tucked under her chin. He sits in the plastic chair with his daughter asleep on his arm and waits. The doctor comes 40 minutes later. A woman, middle-aged, with the particular directness of someone who delivers difficult news regularly and has learned that softening it doesn't help anyone. "Your family?" she says. "Her husband." He keeps his voice low so he doesn't wake Evie. The doctor looks at the child asleep against him. Then she sits down and opens the chart. "Severe kidney disease," she says. "Not new, this has been developing for years, possibly 4 or 5 at minimum. Significantly worsened by what appears to be chronic stress, poor nutrition, and critically inconsistent medical treatment. The kind of inconsistency," she says carefully, "that happens when someone isn't staying in one place long enough to maintain care with a single doctor. When treatment gets started and then interrupted and then started again somewhere else by someone who doesn't have the full picture. She went into crisis 36 hours ago. She's stable now but fragile. She'll need a specialist. She'll need consistent treatment from this point forward. She'll need stable conditions, no more disruption, no more displacement." He listens to all of it without moving. "Can I see her?" he asks. "Tonight she needs to rest. Tomorrow morning." He nods. The doctor leaves. He sits in the plastic chair with Evie breathing steadily against his arm and Soul's night falling somewhere on the other side of the world, and he lets the weight of what he just heard settle into him slowly. Years, the doctor said. Years of inconsistent treatment. Years of chronic stress and poor nutrition. Years of not staying anywhere long enough. He looks at his daughter's sleeping face. Then he looks at the corridor wall and stays very, very still. He takes Evie back to the apartment that night. She wakes up disoriented in the car, and he tells her the doctors are taking good care of her mother, and she should sleep, and she believes him and closes her eyes again. He carries her up the stairs and puts her in Avery's bed and covers her with the blanket she pointed to when he asked which one, and sits in the kitchen in the dark for a long time. In the morning he makes breakfast and Evie eats and watches him with those eyes that miss nothing. "Are we staying here?" she says. "For now. Not for long." She nods, eating her toast. "We never stay anywhere for long," she says. "Not sadly. Just as a fact. The way she might report the weather." "Where have you lived?" he asks. Carefully. She thinks about it, counting on her fingers. "London first. Then Paris. Then Dubai for a little while, but Mommy didn't like it there. Then Amsterdam. Then here." She looks at her fingers. "I think that's all of them. But some of them were very fast, so I might be forgetting one." He picks up his coffee. Puts it down without drinking it. "Did you go to school?" he asks. "For different schools." She says it the way she says everything. Just the fact of it, clean and without complaint. "I'm good at starting new ones. Mommy taught me how." She says you just have to find one person who looks kind and sit near them on the first day. That's good advice. She has a lot of good advice. Evie looks at him. "Were you and Mommy fighting? Is that why we left?" He looks at her carefully. "No, we weren't fighting." "Then why did we leave?" "That's a long answer. I'm still finding all the pieces of it." She considers this. "Okay. Will you tell me when you have all the pieces?" "Yes. Promise. Promise." She goes back to her toast. Then, "Mommy talked about you a lot. Not like she was sad. More like you were a fact. Like Korea was a fact. She always said Korea was part of me even if we weren't there. She was right. She taught me some words." Evie straightens up slightly. "Sarangi, Gwayowo, and harangue." She touches the rabbit's ear. She said harangue means love. She said when you love something you should name it so it knows. He looks at the rabbit. Then at his daughter. He doesn't trust his voice for a moment. So he just nods. He takes her to the hospital after breakfast. He sees Avery through the small glass panel in the door before he takes Evie in. He needs that moment. He needs to see her before he has to keep his face neutral about it. She looks like her. Still recognizably her. The same face. The same strong jaw and full mouth and broad forehead. But she's thin in a way that is painful to look at. The shadows under her eyes go deeper than any recent illness. Even unconscious, her hands look tired. He stands at that window for 10 seconds. Then he opens the door and lets Evie go in first. Evie walks to the bed and takes Avery's hand and holds it. "I called him Mommy," she says quietly. "Like you said. He came. We're both here now so you can wake up." Jae-hyun pulls the chair to the bedside and sits. He doesn't touch her. He just looks at her and lets all the questions organize themselves into something that won't come out as an accusation the moment she opens her eyes. He has time. He'll use it. The specialist he brings in adjusts Avery's treatment within 48 hours of reviewing her records. Jae-hyun moves Evie to the Midtown apartment the same day. 2 bedrooms, high floor, windows facing the skyline instead of a brick wall. Evie walks in and goes straight to the window and presses both hands against the glass and looks out at New York like she's taking inventory of it. "We get all of this?" she says. "Yes." She turns around. "Can I pick my room?" "There are only 2. One is your mother's." She goes and looks at both anyway. Comes back. "I like the one with the window seat," she says seriously. Harangue likes windows. He sets her room up while she explores. Books on the shelf. Her blanket on the bed. He installs a hook at her height by the front door for her backpack without explaining it, and later she finds it and hangs the backpack there and looks at him with an expression that tells him she understood exactly what it meant. He also, quietly, without telling anyone, slides a small tracker into the lining of that bear-shaped backpack. He's building a threat picture. Until he has a name, he's not taking chances with anything. He visits Avery every day, sometimes twice. He sits in the chair beside her bed and talks to her sometimes. Not about the important things, those conversations require her to be conscious. just talks. Tells her Evie ate well today. Tells her it rained this morning. Tells her the specialist says the treatment is working. He goes through her things from the Bronx apartment while she's still admitted. Financial records, bills, anything that helps him understand the shape of the last 6 years. He finds medical bills going back 4 years, each one with a note in Avery's handwriting. Paid, partial, pending. He goes through them one by one, and the picture they build makes his jaw tighter with each page. And then he finds the receipt. Pawn shop receipt. 3 years old. 1 platinum diamond solitaire ring. Custom design. On the back in Avery's handwriting the name of a hospital billing department and an amount that matches almost exactly what the ring sold for. He sits on the edge of the hotel bed with that receipt in his hand for a long time. He designed that ring himself. 3 weeks. The jeweler told him he was being excessive. He hadn't listened because he knew what he wanted and he knew what she deserved. He'd watched her open the box and seen something happen on her face that she tried immediately to contain and hadn't quite managed, and he'd kept that moment for years because it was the clearest he'd ever seen her feel something she didn't plan to feel. She sold it to pay a hospital bill. He folds the receipt, puts it in his jacket pocket, makes a phone call to a contact who specializes in locating specific items through secondary markets. Gives him the description and tells him to find it regardless of what it costs. Then he sits there a moment longer. Then he gets up and goes back to the hospital. Avery opens her eyes on the 5th day. He's in the chair. He's always in the chair now. He's reading something on his phone when he hears the change in her breathing and looks up and finds her blinking at the ceiling, slow and disoriented. Coming back from somewhere deep. Her eyes move. Find him. The silence between them is the size of 6 years. She looks at him for a long moment. He looks back. Inside that silence everything sits. Every question, every year, every version of every conversation he rehearsed at 2 in the morning. All of it waiting. "You came," she says finally. Her voice is rough from the tubes. "Evie called me." Something moves across her face. Relief and grief and something more complicated underneath both. "She wasn't supposed to call yet," she says. "I told her to wait until it was really bad. It was bad enough. How long have you been here?" 5 days. She absorbs that. "Where is she? Where's Evie?" "At the apartment. She's safe. She's with my man, Avery. She's fine." The tension leaves Avery's shoulders so fast it's almost a collapse. She presses her hand over her mouth for a moment, then takes it away. "Okay," she breathes. "Okay." He lets her have that, watches her collect herself. Then, "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I was scared." "Of what specifically?" "Of what would happen if I stayed." Her voice is careful, measured. "Someone sent photographs to our apartment. Of me. Locations circled. Names written in the margins. A week before that someone shot at me outside our building. 2 days before that a car exploded near the restaurant I went to every Tuesday." She pauses. "They knew my routines. They knew exactly where I was every day. And I was pregnant and I was terrified and I thought if I stayed I was going to get myself and the baby killed. I opened an account for you," he says, "a year and a half after you left. I funded it every month. I watched the balance move and I thought you were using it. I thought you were somewhere stable." She frowns, turns to look at him. "What account?" "Jae-hyun, I have never had access to any money from you. Not 1 cent. She says it simply. "There were times I couldn't afford her medication. I worked whatever I could find wherever we were. When that wasn't enough She stops. "You sold the ring," he says quietly. Her eyes drop. "Yes. I found the receipt." She doesn't say anything for a moment. "I'm sorry," she says. "I know what that ring meant to you. I didn't want to. I just didn't have another." "Avery." He stops her. "That's not what He pauses, steadies himself. "The money was leaving the account every month. Someone was redirecting it, taking it before it could reach you and routing it through accounts that have nothing to do with you. They've been intercepting everything I put in place, and tracking your location, making sure you never stayed anywhere long enough to stabilize." She stares at him. Someone in your organization. Yes, I don't have a name yet, but I'm close. And none of your people noticed. It's not quite a question. More like something she's working out. They were careful, he says. They worked within systems they knew intimately. Made everything look like normal transactions. Nothing triggered an alert because nothing looked wrong from the inside. His jaw is tight. I'm looking now. I'll find them. Avery is quiet for a long time. Then she looks at him directly. How is she? Really? She told me about 4 schools, he says. London, Paris, Dubai, Amsterdam, then New York. Avery closes her eyes. She's not broken, he says. He thinks of Evie at the window with both hands pressed to the glass. Of Evie counting countries on her fingers like she's listing facts about the weather. She's extraordinary, Avery. Whatever those years cost her, she came out of them extraordinary. Avery opens her eyes. They're wet at the corners and she lets them be. I didn't want her to feel like half of herself was missing, she says quietly. Even when we were running. She deserved to know where she came from. He looks at her for a long moment. She named her rabbit Harangue, he says. Avery's breath catches. She told me you taught her. That you told her when you love something you should name it so it knows. Avery presses her lips together and nods, and doesn't try to say anything for a moment. Rest, he says. He stands and reaches out and covers her hand briefly with his. Just long enough. Evie's coming tomorrow morning. She's been asking about you every hour. The corner of Avery's mouth moves. That sounds right, she says. The doctor clears Avery to leave 17 days after she was admitted. Jae-hyun is there when they discharge her and she argues about the wheelchair exactly as much as he expected, which is considerably, and he ignores her exactly as much as he planned to, which is completely. She goes quiet when she walks into the Midtown apartment. Stands in the living room and looks at the light and the space and the skyline in the window and doesn't say anything for a moment. You didn't have to do all this, she says. I know. Jae-hyun. Avery. He looks at her. Just let me. She looks back at him. Something moves through her expression. Then she nods and goes to find Evie, who has already heard her voice from the bedroom, and is currently running down the hallway in her socks, skidding at the corner yelling mommy at a volume that suggests she has completely abandoned every ounce of composure she's been maintaining for the last 2 weeks. Avery drops to her knees in the hallway and catches her. Holds her with both arms and her face in Evie's hair, and Evie talks without stopping about everything. The apartment and the window seat and the hook for her backpack and Harangue's opinion of the view. Jae-hyun stays in the living room and gives them that. Min-suk calls that evening. Jae-hyun steps into the bedroom to take it. I'm in New York, his father says. I know. I need to see you. Tomorrow. Somewhere neutral. Not here. Jae-hyun. Tomorrow, he says, and hangs up. They meet at a hotel restaurant in Midtown. Early morning. Before the breakfast crowd. Jae-hyun is already there when his father walks in, and he watches him cross the room and sit down across from him, and something that has been building in his chest for days tightens all at once. A server brings coffee. Neither of them touches it. Min-suk opens his mouth. Don't. Jae-hyun's voice is not calm this time. Not the controlled quiet he usually carries. There's something underneath it that his father recognizes immediately because he's the one who taught it to him. Before you say a single word, I need you to hear something. Min-suk closes his mouth. She's been in London, Jae-hyun says. Paris, Dubai, Amsterdam. Then a 1-bedroom apartment in the Bronx with a broken lock. For countries. For schools. Running every few months because someone kept finding her and moving her along before she could breathe. He pauses. She went into kidney failure. Not because of bad luck. Because she spent 6 years too sick and too poor and too unstable to maintain consistent medical care. Because she had nowhere to stay long enough to let a doctor actually treat her properly. Another pause. She sold her wedding ring 3 years ago to pay a hospital bill. She sold it because she had nothing else left to sell. Min-suk says nothing. His jaw is tight. My daughter slept in a hospital chair next to her mother's bed when she was 3 years old. Jae-hyun leans forward. The anger in his voice is not loud. It's the specific kind of anger that has been compressed for days into something precise and devastating. She's 5 years old and she can list 4 countries she's lived in like she's reading a grocery list. She knows how to make friends on the first day of a new school because her mother had to teach her a system for it because they moved so much she needed one. He stops. That is what you did. You did that. I arranged support, Min-suk says. Money. Protection. Safe ho. I don't care about the money right now. Jae-hyun's voice cuts across him. You manufactured her fear. You staged a shooting outside our building. You blew up a car near a restaurant she went to every Tuesday. You sent photographs of her to our apartment with her location circled and names in the margins. He looks at his father directly. She was 3 months pregnant. She was on that street. The shooter was controlled. She didn't know that. He says each word separately. She was 3 months pregnant and there was gunfire and she ran and she fell on that street and she spent 2 days in the hospital and I spent that night hunting whoever did it. A pause. It was you. Min-suk is silent. You decided. Jae-hyun continues. Without asking me, without telling me, that my wife was a liability, that my child was a liability, that I would be better off without them. And you were wrong. His voice doesn't waver. You were completely wrong. And it cost us 6 years. 6 years of my daughter growing up without a father. 6 years of Avery sick and frightened and alone. 6 years of... He stops, looks away for a moment, then back. Was it worth it? The silence that follows is enormous. Min-suk looks at his son, and something happens on his face that Jae-hyun has only seen twice in his entire life. The old man's composure cracks. Not completely, but deeply enough. No, he says. His voice is barely controlled. It was not worth it. I need you to say that to her. Min-suk looks up. You're going to sit in front of her, Jae-hyun says. And you're going to say everything you just said to me. And you're going to ask nothing from her in return. No forgiveness. No absolution. You say it because she deserves to hear it. He stands, picks up his jacket. If she agrees to see you, I'll ask her. You don't deserve the meeting, but I'll ask. He pauses. And my daughter. Her name is Evelyn. She goes by Evie. You don't meet her until after you've spoken to Avery. And not until I decide you're ready. He looks at his father one more time. That is not a negotiation. He leaves his father at the table. Avery takes 2 days to decide. Jae-hyun tells her the meeting is available if she wants it and leaves it alone. He doesn't push. He lets her get there on her own. On the second evening, she says quietly, Okay, but you stay in the room. I'll be there. Min-suk comes on a Friday afternoon. Evie is out with Jae-hyun's man. A park, ice cream, instructions to stay out for at least 2 hours. Jae-hyun sits in the armchair by the window. Avery sits on the couch. Min-suk sits across from her and for a moment none of them say anything. Then Min-suk looks at Avery and says, I want to start by saying that I know an apology is not enough. I know that before I say anything else. Avery watches him, waiting. 6 years ago I made a decision, he says. I decided that my son's life was worth more than your right to live yours. That my judgment about what was dangerous was more important than your right to make your own choice. He pauses. I arranged the shooting, the car, the photographs. I engineered all of it. I know what those things did to you. I know you were pregnant. And I want you to know that I knew you were pregnant when I did it. Something moves through Avery's expression. She doesn't look away from him. I told myself I was protecting my son, he continues. But the truth is I didn't trust him. I didn't trust him to survive loving you and I didn't trust you to survive his world. I thought love was a liability I could remove. He looks at her directly. I couldn't have been more wrong. And what I removed instead was 6 years. 6 years from you and from him and from a child who deserved to grow up knowing her father. She slept in a hospital chair next to my bed, Avery says. Her voice is very quiet and very controlled. When she was 3 years old, I was sick and I couldn't afford a private room, and she slept in the chair because she was too scared to sleep in the waiting room alone. She holds his gaze. She's 5 now and she knows how to introduce herself in 4 cities and make friends on the first day of a new school. Because we moved so often, I had to teach her a system for it. She stops. She grew up too fast. She learned how to be brave too young. Because of what you started. Yes, Min-suk says, quietly. She did. I'm not forgiving you today, Avery says. I don't know if or when that happens. But I heard you. Pause. And I want you to know that she is extraordinary. Whatever those years cost her, she came out of them extraordinary. I did that right. Whatever else I got wrong, I did that right. Something passes across Min-suk's face that is almost undoing him entirely. Yes, he says. You did. Jae-hyun says nothing from his chair by the window. He just watches and thinks about what it costs to sit across from the consequences of other people's decisions and hold yourself together through it. Avery did it with more dignity than the situation required. More than he could have managed. Min-suk meets Evie 3 days later. In a park, afternoon light coming through the trees, Jae-hyun nearby and Avery on a bench watching. His father stands in front of his granddaughter and looks at her the way a man looks at something he almost lost before he understood what it was. Evie looks up at him with those careful eyes. Are you my Harabiaji? She asks. Min-suk's throat works. Yes, he says. Not entirely steady. I am. She tries the word back at him, adjusting the syllables until she gets them right. Then she looks at him very seriously and says, Mommy said Korea is part of me, even when we weren't there. Min-suk glances at Avery on the bench. Avery meets his look with an expression that is not warm but is not closed. Then she looks at her daughter. He looks back at Evie. Your mother is right, he says quietly. It has always been part of you. Evie nods like this confirms something she already suspected. Then she holds up harangue. This is harangue, she says. It means love. Mommy taught me. Min-suk looks at the rabbit for a moment. It's a good name, he says. I know, Evie agrees, and turns to show harangue the park. The name comes on a Tuesday. Kang Jae-hyun, his cousin, his strategist. 8 years inside his inner circle. She sat at every table that mattered. She had access to his financial architecture, his communication systems, the organizational infrastructure she helped him build from the ground up. Jae-hyun sits with the name for exactly 1 hour in his office with the door closed. He turns it over, checks it against everything he's been building for weeks, fits it against the redirected transfers, the location tracking, the precise invisible nature of 6 years of sabotage. Fits everywhere. Perfectly. And when he works out how she did it, the answer is almost elegant in how terrible it is. She didn't work against the organization. She worked through it. She used his own systems, transfer protocols she designed, communication channels she managed, financial structures she built from scratch. She made his infrastructure her cover. Every redirect looked like a standard internal transfer. Every location update looked like routine security monitoring. Nothing triggered an alert because nothing looked wrong. She made sure of that because she was the one who decided what looking wrong meant. She'd been managing his world for 8 years. She knew exactly where every blind spot was. And no one looked because no one knew there was anything to look for. A boss's foreign wife who left 6 years ago was simply not a priority to anyone. Seo-rin made sure it stayed that way, quietly, patiently, from the inside. He also thinks about what Avery said in the hospital. The fear that came from nowhere. Someone knew her routines. Someone knew exactly where she was every day. Someone who sat in his inner circle and had access to everything. He doesn't tell Avery the name. Not yet. The situation is still moving and Seo-rin was someone Avery trusted, and that conversation requires the danger to be over first. He starts quietly closing off Seo-rin's access. Carefully, methodically, slowly enough that she doesn't feel the doors shutting. He wants her to feel safe right until the moment she isn't. He does not move fast enough. It's a Wednesday afternoon. Avery has a follow-up appointment at the hospital and Jae-hyun goes with her, leaving Evie at the apartment with Sung, his most trusted man. He tells Sung the situation is elevated. Eyes on Evie at all times. Don't let her leave his sight. He's in the waiting room when his phone rings. Sung's number. He picks up immediately. She's gone. Sung's voice is controlled but tight underneath. The lobby camera went offline 9 minutes ago. I was with her in the living room. I went to check the door because there was a sound in the hallway. Someone came from behind. When I came around she was a breath. Boss. I'm sorry. She was right there. How long? 11 minutes. Maybe 12. He's already standing. Tracker up on his phone. The signal from Evie's backpack is moving. 5 blocks north. Heading east. Avery comes out of the consultation room and stops the moment she sees his face. What happened? Not a question. Someone took Evie from the apartment. The color drains from her face completely. He watches her pull herself back from the edge of panic with visible effort. Her hands close into fists at her sides. Do you know where she is? He holds up the phone. The signal blinking. Moving. Yes. Then go. She grabs his arm. Tight. Go right now. Bring her back. He goes. The signal leads him to a parking garage on 38th Street. His team takes all 4 exits simultaneously. He goes straight through the middle. Second level. He hears them before he sees them. Seo-rin is standing beside a black car. Gray coat. Hair perfect. Composed the way she always is. The way she has been for 8 years across every table they've ever shared. Calm and elegant and completely in control of whatever room she occupies. She could be at a board meeting. She looks like she planned every detail of this down to the last minute, which she did, because that is precisely who she is and precisely why she stayed invisible for 6 years inside an organization built to detect threats. She wasn't a threat to the organization. She was the organization. She helped build it. She knew where every alarm was because she designed them. Evie is beside her. Not restrained. Standing with her arms wrapped around herself, her chin down, trying very hard to hold herself together. Her backpack is on her back. She hasn't been able to reach Harang, and she is managing without him with the particular rigid stillness of a child who is terrified and trying not to show it. She looks up, sees him. Daddy. Comes out small and wrecked and very young. Nothing like the composed child who rates his cooking and names things deliberately. She takes 1 step toward him and Seo-rin shifts, positioning herself slightly between them. Not grabbing Evie, just blocking. And Evie stops because she's been frightened into stillness. Jae-hyun. Seo-rin's voice is as composed as her face. I needed you to stop and pay attention. You have not been paying attention since she arrived. Step away from my daughter. You are different with them. Slower. More distracted. The organization cannot function when you are. Seo-rin. 1 step forward. Then another. His voice doesn't change. Doesn't rise. Step away from my daughter. You don't understand what they cost you. What loving them costs the entire. I won't say it again. Something shifts behind her eyes. A calculation completing. Her hand moves toward the car door handle and Evie makes a frightened sound. Small and involuntary and completely uncontrolled, and that sound ends every other consideration. He crosses the distance in 4 steps. Gets to Evie and gets her behind him in the same motion and his arm goes back blocking her completely, and then a shot comes from the north entrance where one of Seo-rin's men has panicked and the situation has come apart and it catches him high on the left side and he goes down to 1 knee. Daddy. Evie's voice right behind him. High and frightened. Stay behind me. He gets back to his feet. Don't move, Evie. Right behind me. Don't move. She grabs the back of his jacket with both hands and holds on. His team comes in from 3 sides. Fast and decisive and final. Seo-rin, who planned everything else so carefully, did not account for a tracker in a child's backpack. When it ends, the garage is quiet and Jae-hyun is still standing with a bullet in his left side, and Evie's hand still gripping the back of his jacket. He turns around and crouches down. Evie looks at him. And then everything she's been holding back since the moment someone knocked Sung down and took her from the apartment comes apart all at once. She drops Harang. She had the backpack, the zip comes undone and Harang falls and she doesn't even reach for him and she cries. Properly cries. Big shaking sobs that she has been containing for hours and cannot contain anymore. Her whole body shakes with it. He picks Harang up and puts him in her arms. She clutches him and keeps crying. It's over, he says. It's done. I've got you. I was so scared. She says it into Harang's fur. I was so scared, Daddy, she said. You sent her, but I knew you didn't. You said you'd never send someone I didn't know. And I kept trying to slow down so you could find me. That was so smart. He keeps his voice steady for her. You did exactly right. You did everything right. All of it. She cries for another minute. Then she pulls back and looks at his left side where the blood has come through his shirt, and her eyes go wide all over again. You're bleeding. It looks worse than it is. It looks really bad. Evie. He holds her face in his good hand. I'm okay. I promise you I'm okay. But we need to go to the hospital so they can fix it. Can you be brave just a little longer? She looks at him, still shaking. Then she nods and holds Harang tighter and takes his hand. Avery is in the hospital waiting room when they arrive. She called her own car the moment he left. She's sitting with her back straight and her hands in her lap and her face doing the thing where she's keeping everything locked down by sheer will. She sees Evie first. She's off the chair and across the room and on her knees on the hospital floor before anyone says anything, and she holds her daughter with both arms, and Evie dissolves into her and cries all over again into her mother's shoulder. The kind of crying that has to finish itself out completely. I know, Avery says quietly, over and over, steady and certain. I know, baby. I've got you. I've got you. Over Evie's head she looks at Jae-hyun. At his side. At the blood. Her expression does something she doesn't fully control. He shakes his head slightly. I'm okay. She holds his gaze for a long moment. Then she pulls Evie closer and doesn't look away from him until he goes through the door. The bullet comes out clean. Nothing vital. 2 weeks of restricted movement and considerable frustration ahead of him. The doctor says. He accepts this without comment. When he comes back, Avery is in the chair beside the bed with Evie asleep across her lap. All the fear and the hours and the full-blown crying finally crashed into exhaustion. Harang is tucked under Evie's arm. Her breathing is slow and even. Avery looks at him when he comes through the door. Does the inventory. Checks him against what she was afraid she'd find. Then she exhales. Tell me, she says quietly. He sits on the edge of the bed and tells her everything. Seo-rin, the 8 years, the access she had and exactly how she used it. How she built his infrastructure and then turned it into the mechanism for 6 years of invisible sabotage. How she redirected every resource and made it look like standard internal transfers and never triggered a single alert because she designed the system that would have caught her. How she tracked Avery across countries and kept her moving and made sure she could never stabilize anywhere long enough to be safe. He tells her why. That Seo-rin believed love made him weak. That she watched him for years and decided that an emotionally whole Jae-hyun was an unpredictable one. That she wanted him hollow and controlled and manageable, and she spent 6 years engineering exactly that. Avery listens without interrupting. Her hand moves over Evie's hair, slow and automatic. She was the first person I told, she says when he finishes. Very quietly. That I was pregnant. I was scared and she was kind to me and I trusted her. A pause. She hugged me. She said she was so happy for us. He says nothing. I went to her because I was frightened, Avery says. I told her everything. And she took all of it and... She stops. Looks at the window. How does someone do that? Sit across from you and smile and plan all of that at the same time. She didn't see people, he says. She saw the board. She saw positions and outcomes, and she calculated that removing you was optimal, and she executed it without ever doubting herself. For 8 years she sat in my circle, and for 6 of them she was running this alongside everything else. He pauses. She was brilliant, and she was completely wrong about what mattered. Avery is quiet for a moment. Then she looks at him. I owe you an apology, she says. He waits. I ran. She says it simply, directly. I was scared and I ran, and I made a decision that wasn't mine alone to make. She was yours too, and I took her and disappeared, and I told myself it was protection. She pauses. But the truth is I didn't trust you enough. I didn't trust that you would find a way to keep us both safe. I just ran. Her voice doesn't break, but it comes close. And I look at her. She glances down at Evie sleeping across her lap. Her expression shifts into something more complicated. something that carries guilt alongside the love. She's 5 years old and she knows how to make friends in 4 countries. She learned how to be brave too young. She grew up too fast because of the life I gave her. Because I was too scared to trust you. She looks back at him. I'm sorry. For all of it. He looks at her for a long moment. I understand why you did it, he says. Someone built something specifically designed to make you run. That's not entirely yours to carry. But I still should have come to you. Yes, he says. You should have. He pauses and she can hear it in the pause. The weight of it, the specific wound of it, the truth that she didn't trust him with the most important thing that had ever happened to either of them. He doesn't hide it. He lets her hear it. But I understand. She holds his gaze, accepting all of it, the forgiveness and the wound inside it. I never signed them, she says quietly. He goes still. The divorce papers. She looks at him steadily. I couldn't. He reaches into his jacket. He's been carrying something since the day his contact called back about the pawn shop. Her ring. The original ring, retrieved from the secondary market through 3 phone calls and 1 very significant wire transfer. The same platinum band, the same diamond he chose himself, sitting in its box like it had been waiting. Avery stares at it. You found it, she whispers. I told you I handle things. She looks at the ring for a long time. Then she looks at him and her eyes are doing the thing she always fought to contain and she lets them. Finally, and doesn't try to stop it. I never filed, he says. The divorce. I received the papers and I never filed them. He pauses. We've been married this entire time, Avery. She lets out a breath that sounds like it has been held for 6 years. I want to go home, she says. I want to take her and go home. Seoul. Seoul. She pauses. If you, Avery. He looks at her. I have been waiting 6 years to take you home. Something in her face settles. Completely and finally settles. Okay, she says. Okay. Evie is told about Seoul the next morning over breakfast. She responds with a list of questions so long that her toast goes cold while she's still asking them. Food, parks, whether the building allows dogs, whether she'll have a window, whether she can video call her one friend from New York, whether people will understand her, whether there's good street food because mommy said there was. Yes to all of it, Jae-hyun says. Evie pauses. Even the dog? Avery looks at Jae-hyun. We'll discuss the dog, he says. Evie looks at Harang. That means yes, she says confidently. They land in Seoul on a Thursday morning. It's raining. The soft, persistent autumn rain that blurs the city's edges and makes all the lights run together and turns everything into something that looks almost unreal from the right angle. Evie has her face pressed to the car window the entire drive from the airport. Not talking, just looking. Taking in Seoul with the focused attention of someone who has been told about a place for so long that seeing it in real life requires careful, thorough verification. Avery watches her. Jae-hyun watches them both. What do you think? Avery asks her. Evie is quiet for a moment. Her breath fogs slightly against the glass. It looks like the stories, she says. But bigger. She presses her palm flat to the window. Avery's hand finds Jae-hyun's in the space between them on the seat. He turns his hand over and holds it. The apartment has high ceilings and warm light and a kitchen with actual space in it, and windows in every room that face outward toward the city. Evie goes through it in her socks, sliding at the corners, examining everything with the thorough attention of someone taking stock. She finds her room. He set it up before they landed. A bed, a shelf, a window seat looking out over Seoul. She stands in the doorway. This is mine, she says. Yes. She walks in slowly, goes to the window seat, sits and folds her legs under herself and puts Harang in her lap and looks out at Seoul in the rain. She's quiet for a long moment. Then she looks down at the rabbit. Harang, she says seriously. This is home now. Avery makes a quiet sound beside him in the doorway. He looks at her. She's looking at their daughter in the window and her face is doing something it hasn't done in a very long time. Something open and unheld and completely unafraid of being seen. She leans into him. He puts his arm around her. Outside, Seoul moves through its rain. Below them the city is 10 million lights and 10 million lives, and somewhere inside all of it there is a life that is theirs, rebuilt from what should have broken it, stronger in every place it fractured, and finally, after 6 years of running and silence and distance and loss, finally at rest. Evie turns from the window and looks at both of them standing in the doorway. "Are you going to stand there forever?" she asks. Avery laughs. Really laughs. Full and warm and unguarded. The laugh he remembered in the years when he was trying not to remember anything. He pulls her closer. Looks at his daughter in her window seat with the city behind her and the rain on the glass and harangue in her lap. Exactly where she belongs. And he lets 6 years go. Not all at once. But enough. Enough to begin. 6 years. 6 years of running, of silence. Of a love that neither of them could let go of even when everything was working against it. And what this story teaches us is that the people who are meant for you will come. Even at 2 in the morning. Even across oceans. Even after 6 years of distance and pain and unanswered questions. Love that is real does not give up. It just waits for the right moment to find its way back home. Subscribe to Afro-Seoul Stories Soulmates. Like this video, share it, and turn on your notifications so you never miss a story.